Following Jesus into other cultures is an exciting thing to do. And the primary requirement that we want to just talk about this morning is matters of the heart. There are other things that we're going to get to. There's skills in developing in ministry. There's cultural knowledge. There's practices of Christian development. But primarily, we want to go with our hearts that are that have been transformed by the Lord. And when it comes to this kind of work, there's two specific areas of heart work that I want to focus on that I think are foundational to everything that the Lord wants to do in us and through us. And those are humility and surrender. And so we're going to begin just with this session talking about what it means to walk before the Lord in a humble way as we serve Him, and then to just surrender all that we have to Him. I'd like to begin by reading in Philippians chapter 2, verses 3 through 4. It says, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider others better than yourselves. Each of you should look out not only for your own interest, but to the interest of others." Andrew Murray says that humility is the mother of all virtues because none of the others are even possible unless we begin with humility. I cannot manufacture love or kindness or gentleness, generosity in my own heart. And so I have to develop humility to know that I need Jesus in order to get to any of the other things that I want. So humility is basically having a good understanding of knowing how much I'm desperate for God. And to be honest, when we go into a new culture, humility should not be an issue because the reality is that we're going in like a 3-year-old. You don't know anything. You don't have any clue. The skills and the things that you're used to relying on in America are of little value to you. So humility actually should be a natural response to us when we leave our comfort and we go into a new place. If I were to ask you when you land in the country that you're going to go to the store and buy milk and eggs, even that simple thing might cause anxiety in you because you don't know how to do it. If I were to ask you to go to the bank and get some money, or to drive this car down the road and fill it up with gas, any of those simple things that I'm sure that most of you have a fairly decent level of competency with here in America. But once you go to another nation, you'll find that those things become very difficult. And so humility begins with knowing our limitations and knowing that we are in need of Jesus and we're in need of other people. And when we touch down in that nation where we're called to serve, we have a wonderful opportunity to express and to live out that need for other people. A number of years ago, my family and I lived in Uganda, and we would host mission teams. And I can remember one team that we had, there was this one person on the team, and everything that we suggested or wanted to do as far as ministry or even just a day off or practical things, he had another idea. And to get him to do our thing, he would have to grumble and complain and just know that his way would be better and wish that we would just listen to him. And after a couple of weeks of intense frustration trying to work with him, something began to become very familiar to me, and I started to remember my own first missions trip. And my first missions trip was in 1989, and one of my best friends was the team leader, and it was hard for me to remember the fact that I was the same person. Whenever my team leader had an idea, I had a counter idea. Whenever we were going to do one thing, I had a better idea of how we could do it. And that kind of thing just causes strife, grumbling, and it doesn't matter the other things. You might be you might be getting up to pray every morning and intercede. You might be powerful in teaching and in evangelism, but those little things tend to really hinder the work of the Lord. So we want to begin from the place of humility. And we can do that, we can express that outwardly by having an attitude of a learner. And again, going to a new culture is a fantastic opportunity to do this because you don't know anything. And so in my time of living in Uganda, when I would go around to just talk with people about the gospel, I would always try to find something where we could enter into conversation. And before I was going to share some knowledge that I had with the people there, I wanted to learn something from them. And so I got lessons on all kinds of things, from the different types of banana trees that there are, to how to weave a mat, to how to put together a grass roof, to even how to brew an alcoholic beverage using bananas. Just anything that people were doing that I found them doing, I could ask, how do you do this? And they would tell me, well, why are you doing it like this? Or what is the purpose of this? And then also, there's a whole language out there that you don't know anything about. And so every person that you meet is an expert on so many things that you're on ground zero for. And so when we can begin with asking questions, what that does is, again, it's an outward thing, but it does something in our hearts. It transforms us from being the people who know it all, the people who are coming in an arrogance and a pride, to this humility, because there's a vast storehouse of knowledge that this person sitting in front of me, no matter how poor or uneducated they look, no matter how even I can be convinced that they're trapped in different kinds of bondages, but they know so much about life that I don't know. And so if I begin with that, it does something in my heart, and it also does something with the way that they receive me, because they realize now that we are partners. We are creations of God, both of us sharing the image of God. So go with an attitude of a learner. Be just insatiable with your appetite to learn. And again, I mentioned before, but language is a fantastic thing. Try to learn one phrase every day and say it 1,000,000 times. It might be, hello, my name is Tim. This is all the Luganda that I know. I said that phrase probably 100 times before I learned anything else when I moved to Uganda. And then I would learn how to say things like, pineapples are sweet. I would go around saying, hello, my name is Tim. This is all the Luganda I know. Pineapples are sweet. And you feel like an idiot, but again, it's good for you to feel like an idiot sometimes. Another aspect of humility in mission work is to be prepared to lay down everything that gives you a sense of strength and ability and identity. Paul talked about that. We read in Philippians 2. In Philippians 3, he talks about that there's all of the things that he used to rely on to give him a sense of importance and identity and value, whether it's the way that he was able to keep the law, just even his birth and the family that he was in, and all of these different things. And he said when he came to Christ, all of those things became nothing. And again, when we're shifting now and we're going into a ministry site in a new location, it's a fantastic opportunity for us to allow the Lord to strip away all of those false identities, all of those things that we lean on that really are not of Christ. They might be, our education or our money or our expertise or the influence or the friends that we have or whatever it might be that in the States we rely on. When we're going as a member of a missions team, those things really don't mean anything. And the things that are going to cause us to be effective in ministry are, maybe not so much my Bible knowledge or my understanding of how to build a building or to dig a water well, but it's my availability, it's my humility, it's my desire to serve and to learn and to share, just to share simply what's in my heart. Finally, when it comes to humility, I just want to urge us to rejoice and to boast in our weaknesses. Again, Paul talks about that in 2 Corinthians, and he says the things that I'm going to boast in are not the things that I'm strong, the things that I feel good about, but my weaknesses. I remember when I was growing up, I loved reading The Lord of the Rings. And of course, my favorite character was Aragorn. And I would go out into the woods and I'd have my sword and slaughter all the orcs and be the hero. But as I grew up, I remember one day, a very specific day as an adult, and the realization came to me, and it wasn't necessarily a pleasant one, that I'm actually have a lot more to identify with Frodo than I do with Aragorn. I'm small, I'm scared, I'm weak, and I don't have a clue. And I'm like, Gandalf, Mordor, which way is it, left or right? I don't know anything. And just to be honest, going on this missions trip, most of you are not Aragorns and Legolases and Gandalfs. Most of you are the hobbits. And coming to grips with the fact that I'm going in weakness, I'm not going in strength. And in fact, my very presence there, in some ways, is a burden to somebody else. They have to kind of clean up some messes, and they have to do things to work around me because of my limitations in this culture and in this language and in this place. I can't go somewhere without a translator maybe. I need lots of things. And that kind of knowledge, not to say that, oh, well, I shouldn't go because I'm useless, because if you follow the story again, remember the hobbits do turn out to be heroic in the end. And when given the chance, they do things that are vital for the mission. But we have to kind of be in touch with our own inner Pippin and understand that it's not our strength sometimes, but it's our weaknesses. And in fact, it's those very weaknesses that when we kind of grasp them and boast in them can be the things that help us. On one of the other mission trips that we hosted, there was a young man who began the trip as someone that I was having a hard time getting along with again. In every way, he kind of had it going on the outside. He was athletic and strong and confident. But I was having a hard time getting along with him, and he wasn't sensitive to cultural things. And we took a trip kind of to a remote area in a village, and something kind of started happening to him, and he became very fearful. And as the day went on and progressed, he became more and more fearful. And things would happen to kind of stir that up. There was someone in the village who was mentally disturbed, who was kind of coming around and causing trouble. And he was just huddled in his room in a corner, completely immobilized and in terror. And we sat with him the whole night, he and his team and I. And, the next morning we were able to get him back out of the village and get him back to a place that felt more safe for him and secure. And for the remainder of the trip, they were in the country for another 3 or 4 weeks after that experience. But everything had changed. And we became close friends. And even his team that had been having issues with him, everything was broken down because he was at his lowest. His weakness came out. And having experienced that weakness, at first, of course, he felt shame and he was embarrassed and all of these things. But then when he was accepted, the bond that grew together between that team, and even this guy was able to develop amazing relationships with some of the Ugandans. And again, it came out of weakness, not out of strength. So when we walk in humility, we find that doors open for us in relationship, doors open for us in how the Lord can minister through us. And the second area that I want to talk about is surrender. And it says in Luke chapter 9, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me. For whosoever wants to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for me will save it. And on this mission trip, we have an opportunity to deny yourself in many different ways. You deny your ambitions, your visions, your plans, your methods, your expectations. In fact, a fantastic team exercise would be to sit down before you go and everyone have an opportunity to share some of your expectations for this trip, whether it's personal, whether it's something that you want God to do in your heart, or how you want to be used, or how you want to minister. And then together to pray and just offer those things up to the Lord and say, Lord, I'm not going on the trip because of these expectations, but I lay them down. You, Jesus, are Lord, and you have your way. The ways of doing things, our ambitions and our plans. The story that hopefully you read before watching this talks about these two men, Pastor Bill and Joe, and they had their agenda and their plan, and the whole mission was about their plan and what they wanted to accomplish. And when we go in with that kind of attitude, as we'll see as we read the story along, just it causes all kinds of friction and problems. But when we, in our heart, from the beginning, and then each day there'll be opportunities to do this, just to lay down my hopes and ambitions about what this trip is going to mean. Then again, that's something that the Lord is doing in my heart, and it's also something that just enhances the ministry and enhances our team relationships. In another team that we had, there was a guy on the team with just from a place of such a good heart, he got the idea that he wanted to buy a cow for a certain pastor. And he pulled another one of my friends, my Ugandan friends, aside and said, I want to buy this cow. And, he kind of talked and said, about how much do you think it might cost? The problem was they were leaving the nation in the next day. And so he had to have it now. He had to have it by the next morning. And so, he told my friend about it, and he was like, okay, I'll try to help you. My friend went away and tried to arrange everything. And he wasn't able to get it for the price that was needed. He wasn't able to get exactly what this guy wanted. And so he came back and told him, I'm sorry, here's your money back. And the guy just exploded on them. He had this rage came out of him because he just knew that this thing had been put in his heart and that he was supposed to make it happen. And now my friend, who was actually a very humble, soft-spoken person, had spent hours trying to work this out for him, and it didn't happen. And he just exploded in rage because he didn't get his way, basically. And the thing that he wanted to happen didn't happen. So we need to surrender those things, even the ministries, even the things that come from our heart. And we even need to be careful with the, God told me to do this, those kinds of things, because when we can express that in a way that is filled with a little bit of an arrogance that says this has to happen and there's no arguing, or we can express it in a way of, I really feel that the Lord might be putting this on my heart to do, and maybe go to team leaders or go to national contacts and say, what do you think about this? And get a little bit of wisdom. Always with the attitude of humility and surrender. Another thing that's very important for us to surrender going on a missions trip, and I used to think this was obvious until I became involved with some mission teams, is to lay down our desire and need for comfort and security. Now, BWO is doing everything to make sure that the trip is safe, to make sure that no one is going to be in danger, or that comfort or discomfort is somewhat limited. However, you're going to Africa, or you're going to Costa Rica, or you're going somewhere, you're going to a developing nation, and things are different. They're not the same. And the levels of comfort are different. It's hot there. Maybe there's no air conditioning. Maybe the beds are lumpy. Maybe the toilet is a hole in the ground sometimes. There are bugs. There are rodents. When people travel, they often deal with diarrhea or other types of sickness. There are discomfort in travel. People get pressed together. You're sweating. There's smells. There's all kinds of things that are uncomfortable. And when we go and we start comparing things, well, back in America, we do it like this, or we can't put another person in this car, or I got to sleep on that, or oh my gosh, look at the bugs. We just need to surrender all of that and say, you know what? I don't have to be comfortable for this 2 weeks. I don't have to be physically comfortable. I don't even have to be emotionally comfortable. Maybe in America we have personal space, or we have privacy that we're not going to be able to have on the trip. And so we just surrender those things. We surrender the things that we do to get comfort. Maybe we have comfort foods or comfort drinks. I just need my peppermint latte or something like that to soothe my soul. And those things might not be available where you're going. And so I just want to urge you. The trip will be better for you. It'll be better for everybody around you if you surrender those things in advance. Surrender every expectation of comfort, and even security to some degree. Not that, again, it's an unsafe venture, but there's no guarantees. And you get on the roads and people are driving crazy. And again, I mentioned that people get sick, and things happen like that. So, but this is for the gospel, and so we're laying that down and we're surrendering. The final thing is just to surrender control. You are not in control. You might even be a team leader, but you're not in control. And if you can release yourself from that burden of having to be in control, you will find an amazing freedom on this trip. If you hold on to the burden of having to be in control and having to control the results and having to control what this person does and having to control the environment, the more you grasp onto those kinds of things, the more difficult the trip is going to be, and actually the less fruitful it's going to be. But if you can release yourself from the burden of control, again, going back to the Philippians chapter 2, he said, don't look out only to your interests, but look to the interest of others. If you don't have to get your own way, if you can just escape from the tyranny of having to get your own way and kind of go with the flow, surrender that control, that one thing in itself will just do so much to boost your effectiveness as a missionary on the field, and also just boost your peace of mind and where your soul is. In conclusion, I would like us to spend a little bit of time in prayer. First of all, asking the Lord to identify maybe areas in our hearts that there's some pride or arrogance at work, and allow Him to work humility in us. And then to intentionally surrender and lay down before Him whatever we might be holding on to, whether issues of control, of expectations, of our methods, of our dreams and plans and schemes, and just surrender those to the Lord. Offer them up to Him, knowing that we're going to have to do it again and again and again. But it's good, I think, for us to spend some time now, just in prayer and responding to the Lord in that. Thank you.